The child was dying, and no one was supposed to care. Lieutenant Marcus Chen stood at attention outside the quarantine observation deck, his hand resting on the plasma rifle maglock to his thigh. Through the reinforced glass, the small figure lay motionless on the medical platform, her six-limbed body curled inward like a dying insect. Her chitinous plates, normally iridescent blue according to the briefing files, had faded to the color of ash. The breathing slits along her thorax barely moved. "How long?" Chen asked without turning his head. Medical Officer Reeves checked her data pad, her face carefully blank. 4 hours. Maybe 5. And the sedatives? Administered as ordered. She won't feel anything. Chen nodded once. Behind him, the corridor thrummed with the controlled chaos of first contact protocol gone catastrophically wrong. The Velcara delegation had arrived at Station Prometheus 3 days ago with an offer of alliance that would change humanity's position in the galactic community forever. Then, the child had fallen ill. Then, the laws had been explained. Untouchables, they called them. Children born with genetic deviations that marked them for death under Velcara custom. The girl had been brought aboard as a servant, expected to die in service, her existence barely acknowledged. When the fever struck, the delegation had simply requested a quiet space for the inevitable. Standard procedure was to respect alien customs. Non-interference. The words sat in Chen's mouth like broken glass. "Sir?" Reeves' voice carried a warning edge. "The Queen's procession is approaching." Chen straightened, though he was already perfectly aligned. The corridor lighting shifted to ceremonial amber as the Velcara Honor Guard advanced in perfect synchronization. Each warrior stood 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons polished to mirror brightness, razor-edged forelimbs held in ritual position. They moved with the precision of water flowing downhill, beautiful and inexorable. Behind them came the Queen. She was smaller than her guards, but presence radiated from her like heat from a star. 4 eyes tracked everything simultaneously, missing nothing. Her crown was living crystal, growing directly from her skull in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When she stopped outside the observation deck, the entire station seemed to hold its breath. "Lieutenant Chen." Her voice emerged from a translator collar, flat and perfect. "You have maintained appropriate distance." "Yes, Your Majesty." He kept his eyes forward, not on her, not on the dying child behind the glass. "This is acceptable." She studied the observation window with 2 eyes while the other 2 examined him. "The flawed one will complete her purpose within hours. Your medical officer has provided adequate comfort measures." "As ordered, Your Majesty." "You will ensure the remains are processed according to the cultural briefing. No ceremony. No acknowledgement. The flawed are not mourned." She paused. "This is not cruelty, Lieutenant. This is necessity. My people have survived 10,000 years through genetic discipline. Weakness that persists is weakness that spreads." Chen said nothing. His service record contained 4 commendations for diplomatic restraint. He was selected for this assignment because he knew when to stay silent. The Queen's smallest eyes, the ones closest to her cerebral ridge, remained fixed on him. "You have questions." It was not permission to speak. It was an observation. "No, Your Majesty." "A lie." She tilted her head, mandibles spreading slightly in what might have been amusement or threat. The translator provided no context. "But a disciplined one. This is why humans interest us, Lieutenant. You feel disorder but perform order. Useful." Behind her, the honor guard remained motionless. Their weapons were ceremonial but functional. Chen had read the tactical analysis. If they decided to kill him, he would be dead before his nervous system registered the attack. The Queen placed one clawed hand against the observation glass. Inside, the child's breathing had become irregular, each inhalation a visible struggle. "I have birthed 243 offspring, Lieutenant Chen. 16 were flawed. 16 were left to complete their purpose." Her translator somehow conveyed no emotion, which was its own kind of terrible. "Each time, I performed my duty. Each time, The Empire grew stronger. Do you understand? I understand the policy, Your Majesty. That is not what I asked. Chen met her eyes then, 2 of the 4. His throat was dry, but his voice remained steady. I understand that you believe it necessary. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The honor guard tensed microscopically. Reeves' hand drifted toward her sidearm. The Queen's mandibles went completely still. Then, she made a sound like wind through a crystal cave. Laughter, perhaps. Or something without a human equivalent. Honest, she said. Foolishly honest. You risk much for someone you call stranger, for a child who is not a child by your reckoning. Her hand remained on the glass. The Velkara do not forget those who observe our laws during disagreement. This is noted. She turned to leave. Her guard flowed into formation around her. Chen remained at attention, his heartbeat finally returning to normal, when the Queen stopped. The sedatives will ensure she feels nothing? Yes, Your Majesty, Reeves answered. She's already unconscious. And when the end comes? Peaceful. Automatic organ failure. Standard protocol. The Queen's smaller eyes fixed on Chen again. Standard protocol, she repeated. How fortunate for all of us that humans excel at protocol. Then, she was gone, her guard with her, the corridor returning to standard lighting. Chen released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Jesus, Reeves whispered. You actually status? Chen cut her off. She checked her datapad, grateful for the redirect. Vitals declining. 3 hours now, maybe 4. Chen nodded. He stood there watching the child die by degrees, thinking about protocol and genetic purity and the things humans excelled at. Thinking about his daughter, 8 years old, healthy, loved beyond measure. Thinking about borders that couldn't be crossed and rules that couldn't be broken and the space between what was ordered and what was right. Sir? Reeves said carefully. You're off shift in 20 minutes. I'll stay. There's nothing you can, I'll stay. He stood there watching through the glass as the child's breathing grew shallower, and somewhere deep in the station's infrastructure, the ventilation system hummed its endless song, and humanity prepared to join a galactic empire built on 10,000 years of necessary cruelty. Marcus Chen was a good soldier. He followed orders. He respected alien customs. But he was also a father, and fathers understood things that protocol manuals never could. Inside the quarantine chamber, the child's hand moved slightly, reaching for something that wasn't there. Chen's jaw tightened. 3 hours. Maybe 4. He checked his chronometer and began calculating how long regulations required him to wait before performing a routine inspection of medical equipment. How long before a concerned officer might legitimately question the effectiveness of sedation protocols? How long before someone might accidentally discover that certain alien metabolisms process human sedatives differently than expected? How long before a good soldier had to choose? The child's breathing hitched once, a terrible sound that carried through the reinforced glass. Chen closed his eyes. Then, he opened them and pressed the intercom. Medical Officer Reeves. I need you to explain the sedation protocol to me again. Every detail. Starting now. Behind him, he heard her sharp intake of breath. Understanding. Horror. Hope. Sir, every detail, officer. That's an order. Through the glass, the child's chest rose and fell in desperate rhythm. And Marcus Chen, good soldier, decorated officer, began counting seconds until he could save a life that nobody was supposed to mourn. The ventilation system hummed. The station rotated. Somewhere in the diplomatic quarters, a queen waited for news of an acceptable death. The chronometer marked time. 3 hours. Maybe 4. Enough time to break every rule that mattered. Enough time to refuse. Reeves sealed the observation deck door behind them and activated the privacy shield. The small light above the entrance shifted from green to amber, authorized medical personnel only. It bought them minutes, maybe an hour if they were lucky. The sedatives aren't working, Chen said quietly. That's what your report will say. Sir? Reeves moved to the medical console, her fingers trembling over the controls. You understand what this means. If the Queen discovers, she won't discover anything if the child is already dead. He looked at the small figure on the platform. But she's not going to die. Not like this. The child's eyes cracked open, compound eyes, multifaceted, each segment reflecting the sterile medical lighting in fractured patterns. They fixed on Chen with an awareness that gut-punched him. Not unconscious. Not even close. Jesus Christ, Reeves whispered. The sedatives should have Velcara neurology. Chen pulled up the species medical file on his wrist display, scanning data he'd memorized hours ago. Their pain receptors don't process standard anesthetics the same way. She's been awake this entire time. The child's mandibles moved, forming sounds too quiet for the translator to process. One of her 6 limbs reached toward them, the movement weak but deliberate. Reeves was already running a diagnostic scan. Core temperature 42 degrees. That's catastrophic by their standards. Organ function at 30%. Whatever's killing her is moving fast. Her voice cracked. Sir, even if we wanted to help, I don't know how. I'm not a xenobiologist. I don't have the training for then, we find someone who does. Chen activated his comm, bypassing standard channels and routing directly to the station's civilian quarter. Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Emergency medical consultation required. The response came within seconds. Lieutenant? It's 0300 hours. What? I need a xenobiologist who specializes in insected species. I need them in Quarantine 7. I need them now. He paused. And doctor, this conversation is classified under first contact security protocols. Confirm. A longer pause. Confirmed. But Chen, if this is about the Velcara child, you know the diplomatic implications. Confirmed or declined, doctor? I'll be there in 5 minutes. Tanaka out. Reeves hadn't stopped working. She'd moved to the child's side, scanning with every medical instrument available. I'm reading what might be a bacterial infection. Or viral. Or something we don't have a category for. It's concentrated in her primary respiratory system and spreading. She looked up, her eyes red. She's suffocating from the inside. The child made a sound then, wet, rattling, unmistakably agony. Her body convulsed once, plates scraping against the medical platform. The pain, Chen said. Can you do anything about the pain? Not with standard sedatives. But Reeves pulled up a pharmaceutical database. There's an experimental neuroblocker. It was developed for deep space trauma cases. Never tested on Velcara physiology, but the mechanism works on nerve clusters rather than specific neurotransmitters. It might do it. Sir, experimental medications require authorization from Medical Officer Reeves. Chen's voice carried the weight of every regulation he was about to shatter. In the absence of proper sedation, you are authorized to use any means necessary to prevent suffering in a quarantine patient. That's doctrine. That's non-negotiable. So do it. Her hand steadied. Yes, sir. The neuroblocker came in a preloaded injector. Reeves calibrated it for the child's body mass, reduced it by half out of an abundance of caution, then pressed it against the softer tissue between thorax plates. The child flinched but didn't pull away. 30 seconds passed. The child's breathing eased slightly. Her reaching hand stopped trembling. It's working, Reeves breathed. At least for now. The door chimed. Chen deactivated the privacy shield long enough for Dr. Tanaka to slip inside, then reactivated it immediately. The xenobiologist was a small woman in her 60s, her gray hair pulled back severely, her dark eyes taking in the scene with professional efficiency. I see, she said. We're committing treason tonight. Excellent. I was having trouble sleeping anyway. She moved to the medical platform, already scanning the child with her own equipment. Describe symptoms. Reeves rattled off the data. Tanaka listened, nodding occasionally, her expression grave. Kethvara syndrome, she said finally. I've seen it in 3 other insectoid species. It's a genetic disorder triggered by environmental stress. The body essentially attacks its own respiratory system. She looked at Chen. It's also completely treatable with proper intervention. The Velcara know this. The words hung in the air like an accusation. They let them die anyway, Chen said. Not let. Require. Tanaka pulled up molecular structures on her datapad. Kathvara manifests in roughly 2% of Velcara births. Always in the lower castes. Convenient, isn't it? The genetic weakness theory allows them to cull the worker class while maintaining the fiction of evolutionary necessity. Reeves' face had gone pale. That's genocide. That's culture. Tanaka began preparing a treatment protocol. And we're about to interfere with it. So let's be very clear about what we're doing here, Lieutenant. If we save this child, we're not just breaking diplomatic protocol. We're challenging the fundamental structure of their society. The Queen will not forgive this. Chen watched the child's labored breathing. Thought about his daughter. About necessity and cruelty and the lies civilizations told themselves. Can you save her? Tanaka met his eyes. Yes. But the treatment takes 12 hours minimum. Longer if there are complications. You'll need to hide her, hide us, and somehow explain to the Velcara why their untouchable didn't die on schedule. Let me worry about the explanation. Can you start treatment now? I can start. But, Lieutenant, there's something you need to understand. Tanaka gestured to the child. Even if she survives, she can't go back. The moment the Queen discovers what we've done, this child becomes a political crisis. The Velcara will demand we return her so they can correct our interference. They'll insist on it. They may threaten to withdraw their alliance over it. Then, she doesn't go back. Where does she go? She's a Velcara citizen. She has no legal standing in human space. No family to claim her. No species designation for refugee status. Tanaka's voice softened. You're not just saving her life tonight, Lieutenant. You're accepting responsibility for that life. Forever. Chen looked at the child. At her compound eyes watching him with an intelligence that protocol said he should ignore. At her small hands still reaching for comfort that her own people would never provide. He thought about his daughter again. About tucking her in at night. About the way she laughed. About the irrational, ferocious love that made humans guard their children like the universe's most valuable treasure. About the fact that for the Velcara, children were resources. Expendable. Sorted by utility. About the fact that humanity had clawed its way up from caves and chaos because somewhere along the evolutionary line, humans had decided that children, all children, mattered more than efficiency. Start the treatment, he said. Tanaka nodded once and began working. Reeves assisted, the two of them falling into the rhythm of medical emergency. Chen watched for a moment, then moved to the observation window, looking out at the empty corridor. His comm chirped. Station Commander Okoye's voice, crisp and tired. Lieutenant Chin, status update on the Velcara situation? Child remains in quarantine, Commander. Condition unchanged. Medical Officer Reeves is monitoring. The Queen has retired to her quarters. She's requested a notification when the matter is resolved. Tried to keep things quiet. Understood, Commander. Chun. A pause. You've been standing guard for 6 hours. Get some rest. That's an order. Yes, ma'am. Just finishing up some documentation. Another pause, longer this time. Documentation. Right. Don't do anything stupid, Lieutenant. Never, Commander. The comm went silent. Chin wondered how much Okoye suspected. Wondered how much she was deliberately not asking. Good commanders knew when to trust their people and when to maintain plausible deniability. Behind him, Tanaka was setting up an 4-drip of clear fluid. This is a broad-spectrum antibiotic cocktail modified for insected biochemistry. It'll target the infection directly. But her immune system is already compromised. We'll need to monitor constantly for the next several hours. I'll stay, Chen said. So will I, Reeves added quietly. Tanaka looked at them both, then, at the child. You know, in 40 years of xenobiology, I've met a lot of species. Some beautiful. Some terrifying. Some so alien we could barely communicate. She adjusted the fourth flow with delicate precision. But humans are the only ones I've met who'll risk everything for someone else's child. We're probably too stupid to survive in the galactic community. Probably. Chen agreed. Good. She smiled slightly. I'd hate to be the only stupid one in the room. The treatment began. The child's breathing stabilized fractionally. Hours crawled past. At 0500, the child's hand found Reeves, gripping weakly. Reeves held it carefully, mindful of the chitinous texture, and didn't let go. At 0630, Tanaka reported the infection was responding to treatment. Core temperature dropping. Organ function improving to 40%. At 0745, the child's eyes opened fully for the first time. She looked at each of them in turn, her translator collar too damaged to function, but her mandibles formed a shape that needed no translation. Question. Confusion. Hope. Chin crouched beside the medical platform, bringing himself to her eye level. You're safe, he said, knowing she couldn't understand the words but hoping she'd understand the tone. You're going to live. We're not going to let you die. The child's hand tightened on Reeves. A sound emerged from her translator, garbled and broken, but unmistakably a word. Why? The translator was working after all. Barely. But enough. Chin thought about protocol and diplomacy and all the careful reasons why they should have let nature take its course. About genetic purity and cultural respect and the greater good. Then, he thought about his daughter again. Because children matter, he said simply. All children. The child's eyes reflected his face in a dozen fractured images. She was trying to understand a concept her species had bred out of their culture 10,000 years ago. The idea that a flawed thing could have value. That weakness could deserve protection. That mercy was possible. Rest, Chin said. We'll figure out the rest later. The child's eyes slowly closed. Her breathing had evened out. The worst of the crisis had passed. Reeves was crying silently, tears running down her face as she held the small hand. Tanaka was documenting everything with clinical precision, but her jaw was set in grim satisfaction. Chin stood and checked his chronometer. The Queen had requested notification when the matter was resolved. He activated his comm. Lieutenant Chin to Commander Okoye. Go ahead, Lieutenant. The situation has changed. The child's condition has stabilized. I'm requesting an emergency meeting with the Velkara delegation in 2 hours. A long silence. Lieutenant, what did you do? My job, Commander. I ensured the welfare of a sentient being in our care. Chen, I take full responsibility. But, Commander, I'm going to need you to trust me. 2 hours. Main conference room. And ma'am, we're going to need to redefine what humanity stands for in the galactic community. Another pause. Then, incredibly, Okoye laughed. You magnificent idiot. Fine. 2 hours. But Chen, if this starts a war, I'm putting it on your service record. Noted, Commander. He closed the comm and looked at the child. She was sleeping now. Really sleeping, not the drugged unconsciousness they'd intended for her. Her breathing was steady. She would live. But now came the hard part. Now he had to tell an empire built on genetic purity that humanity refused to let their children die. Now he had to make them understand that some lines couldn't be crossed, no matter the cost. Now he had to see if an alliance could survive mercy. Chen looked at Reeves and Tanaka. Thank you? Don't thank us yet, Tanaka said. The Queen is going to be displeased. Let her be displeased. Chen straightened his uniform. She's about to learn something important about humans. What's that? We're very bad at following rules we don't believe in. The station hummed around them. In the diplomatic quarters, a queen slept, dreaming of alliance and expansion and the genetic perfection of her people. In Quarantine 7, a child breathed easy for the first time in days, guarded by 3 humans who decided that some things mattered more than empires. Marcus Chin checked his chronometer. 2 hours until the meeting that would change everything. He began preparing his statement. The words came easily. We refuse. Simple. Unambiguous. Revolutionary. The ventilation system hummed its endless song. The universe held its breath. And, in the growing light of an artificial dawn, a father prepared to defend a child that wasn't his, from a culture that wasn't his, because humanity had decided long ago that children, all children, deserve someone to stand between them and the dark. Even if that someone was just one man with a rifle and a refusal. The chronometer counted down. 2 hours until everything changed. Chin stood guard and waited for the storm. The conference room was designed for intimidation. 30-foot ceilings. Walls of reinforced glass overlooking the curve of the station's superstructure and the planet below. A table carved from a single piece of lunar basalt that could seat 20 delegates comfortably. Lighting that could be adjusted for any species' visual spectrum. Right now it was set for human Velcara compromise, which meant everything looked slightly wrong to everyone. Shadows fell at odd angles. Colors didn't quite match expectations. Perfect for what was coming. Commander Okoye sat at the head of the table, her uniform immaculate, her expression professionally neutral. To her right sat Ambassador Williams, the station's senior diplomat, his face carefully composed despite the fact Chin had woken him with approximately 30 minutes warning. To her left sat Dr. Tanaka, her xenobiology credentials giving her a seat at the table that normally she'd never receive. Chin stood at attention behind them, no longer just a guard but a participant. A witness. A defendant. The Velcara delegation entered in precise formation. 4 honor guards, their weapons ceremonial but functional. 2 administrative officials whose exact role in the hierarchy remained diplomatically vague. And the Queen herself, moving with fluid grace that made the humans' careful postures look clumsy by comparison. She stopped at the opposite end of the table, 4 eyes scanning the room, missing nothing. When she spoke, her translator rendered the words with mathematical precision. This meeting was not scheduled. Protocol requires 48 hours notice for formal diplomatic engagement. She tilted her head. Yet my liaison informed me the matter was urgent. Explain. Okoye stood smoothly. Your Majesty, thank you for accommodating our irregular request. A situation has developed that requires immediate clarification regarding our alliance negotiations. The flawed one. Not a question. The Queen's smaller eyes fixed on Chin. The child has not completed her purpose. No, Your Majesty, Chin said, his voice level. She has not. This meeting concerns her status? It concerns humanity's status, Okoye said carefully. And our ability to honor certain aspects of Velcara custom within human jurisdiction. The Queen's mandibles spread slightly. You have interfered. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The honor guard shifted microscopically, a collective tension that put Chen's combat instincts on high alert. We provided medical treatment to a dying child in our care, Okoye said. That's not interference. That's protocol. Your protocol was explained. Sedation for comfort. No intervention. The flawed complete their purpose through natural conclusion. This is our law. On Velcara territory. Ambassador Williams interjected smoothly. But Your Majesty, Station Prometheus operates under human jurisdiction. And human law requires us to provide medical care to any sentient being in medical distress, regardless of origin. We specified our requirements. You agreed to respect our customs during diplomatic proceedings. This was foundational to our negotiations. We agreed to respect customs, Okoye said. We didn't agree to let a child die when we had the means to save her. The Queen's 4 eyes blazed. That child is not a child by our definition. She is flawed genetic material that served a purpose and has reached expiration. Your emotional classification is irrelevant. It's relevant to us, Chin said quietly. Every eye turned to him. Okoye shot him a warning look, but he was already committed. Explain, the Queen commanded. With respect, Your Majesty, humans don't classify children by their utility. We don't determine value based on genetic optimization. A child is a child. Period. And we protect children. That's not negotiable. Even when those children belong to another species? Another culture? Especially then. The Queen was silent for a long moment. You understand what you have done, Lieutenant Chin. You have stolen Velcara property. You have violated our cultural sovereignty. You have demonstrated that humanity cannot be trusted to honor agreements when convenience suggests otherwise. She turned to Okoye. This alliance is concluded. We will depart within the hour. No. Tanaka's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Everyone stared at the elderly xenobiologist. She stood calmly, her datapad held loosely in one hand. Dr. Tanaka. Williams hissed. Now is not the time. With respect, Ambassador, it's exactly the time. She looked at the Queen. Your Majesty, you claimed the child was genetically flawed. That Kethvara syndrome represents evolutionary weakness that must be culled for the strength of the species. Correct? The Queen's posture shifted slightly. That is our law. Then, explain this. Tanaka projected data onto the conference room's central display. Genetic sequences scrolled past, color-coded, annotated. I've been studying Velcara genetics since your first contact with human space. This is fascinating work, truly. But here's what interests me most. Kethvara syndrome isn't a random mutation. It's a suppressed recessive trait that manifests specifically in lower caste genetics. We are aware of the mechanism. Are you aware that the trait is completely absent in your royal and warrior castes? That it only appears in worker and servant lineages? Tanaka's voice remained academic, but her eyes were steel. That's not natural selection, Your Majesty. That's engineered culling. Someone in your species past deliberately introduced a fatal genetic marker into your lower castes as a population control mechanism. The honor guards tensed. One made a low clicking sound that the translator didn't process. Your speculation is irrelevant, the Queen said, her tone dangerous. Is it speculation? Because I can prove it. The genetic markers are too precise. Too targeted. Kethvara syndrome doesn't weaken your species, Your Majesty. It maintains your social hierarchy. It ensures that worker caste populations never grow large enough to threaten the ruling structure. It's genocide dressed up as evolutionary necessity. The silence that followed was absolute. You accuse us of murdering our own people, the Queen said softly. I accuse you of maintaining a system that murders your own people and calling it culture. There's a difference. Tanaka closed her datapad. But here's what really matters. The treatment is simple. Cheap. Any competent xenobiologist could synthesize the necessary compounds from common materials. You have xenobiologists, Your Majesty. Good ones. They know this syndrome is treatable. They know every child who dies from it could be saved. And they let it happen anyway because the alternative is admitting that 10,000 years of genetic purity doctrine is built on a lie. The Queen's 4 eyes fixed on Tanaka with an intensity that made Chen's hand drift toward his sidearm. You overstep, human. Maybe. But answer me this, how many children has your empire lost to Kethvara syndrome in the past century? 1,000? 10,000? More? Tanaka's voice softened. How many could have lived if you'd simply allowed them to be treated? The flawed serve their purpose through their passing. This strengthens the whole. No, Your Majesty. It strengthens the few at the top by making the many at the bottom believe their suffering is necessary. That's not evolution. That's oppression. The room erupted. The honor guards surged forward, stopped only by the Queen's raised hand. The Velcara administrative officials were making rapid clicking sounds, their translators overlapping in a cacophony of diplomatic outrage. Williams was on his feet, trying to de-escalate. Okoye remained seated, her expression unreadable. Chin stood perfectly still, calculating attack vectors, knowing if this went kinetic he had approximately 3 seconds to live. The Queen's hand remained raised. Slowly, the chaos subsided. You have made a serious accusation, Dr. Tanaka. I've stated a verifiable fact, Your Majesty. You have no authority to judge Velcara culture. I'm not judging your culture. I'm judging your genocide. Another surge from the honor guards. Another raised hand from the Queen. If we accept your premise, the Queen said slowly, you suggest our entire social structure is built on systematic elimination of our own people. Yes. You suggest 10,000 years of tradition is, what did you call it? A lie? A useful one, maybe. But still a lie. And you expect us to simply abandon this tradition because humans find it distasteful? No, Chen said. We expect you to abandon it because it's murder. The Queen's 4 eyes turned to him. You speak now, Lieutenant? With respect, Your Majesty, I've been speaking all along. You just haven't been listening. He took a step forward, ignoring William's horrified expression. You came to humanity offering alliance. Offering trade, technology, cultural exchange. But what you're really offering is legitimacy. You want humanity to validate your place in the galactic community. To accept your laws and customs without question. To help you maintain the fiction that the Velcara Empire is built on strength instead of organized atrocity. Careful, Lieutenant. The Queen warned. I'm being careful, Your Majesty. I'm being very careful about what humanity stands for when we take our place among the stars. He gestured toward the window, toward the vast darkness beyond. The galaxy is full of species. Some of them will be stronger than us. Some will have better technology. Some will offer us deals that seem too good to refuse. But if we accept those deals by accepting that children are expendable, that genetic purity justifies mass death, that efficiency matters more than life, then, we've already lost everything that makes us human. Your sentimentality is not universal law, Lieutenant. Maybe not. But it's our law. And that child is in our care now. On our station. Under our jurisdiction. And we're not giving her back to die. The Queen's posture shifted. Then, you refuse to honor our customs. We refuse to participate in killing children. If you want to call that refusing your customs, fine. But be clear about what you're asking us to endorse. You realize this ends our negotiations. Maybe, Okoye said, standing. Or maybe it begins real negotiations. The Queen looked at her. Explain. Your Majesty, humanity didn't claw its way up from nothing by being the strongest or the smartest or the most genetically perfect. We survived because we adapted. Because we learned. Because we decided that protecting our weak was worth more than culling them. Okoye's voice carried the weight of humanity's entire bloody history. You want an alliance with us? Fine. But understand what you're allying with. We're the species that feeds our elderly even when they can't work. We're the species that spends enormous resources saving premature infants. We're the species that invents wheelchairs and prosthetics and medications because we refuse to accept that disability means expendability. Your compassion makes you weak. Does it? Because from where I stand, we're the ones who went from caves to star stations in 12,000 years. How long did it take the Velcara? 40,000? 50? Okoye smiled slightly. Maybe our weakness is our strength, Your Majesty. The Queen was silent. Her smaller eyes scanned the room while her primary eyes remained fixed on Okoye. Calculating. Weighing. Measuring. The child, she said finally. She lives? She lives. Tanaka confirmed. With treatment, she'll fully recover. And then? Then she grows up. Chen said. Here. On this station. Under human protection. She'll never go back to the Empire. She'll never complete her purpose. She'll just live, learn, become whatever she chooses to become. This is unacceptable. Then walk away, Okoye said simply. Terminate negotiations. Return to your empire. Tell them humanity was too weak to understand genetic necessity. We won't stop you. She paused. But, Your Majesty, think about what you'd be walking away from. Not just technology or trade, but the chance to learn from a species that found strength in protecting the vulnerable. That built an interstellar civilization on the radical premise that every life has value. You speak of ideals, the Queen said. The universe cares nothing for ideals. Maybe not. But people do. Humans do. And maybe, somewhere deep in the Velcara genetic memory, before someone decided to engineer your lower castes for controlled extinction, your people did too. The Queen made a sound that the translator struggled with, something between a hiss and a sigh. If I return without the flawed one's completion, there will be questions. Challenges to my authority. Claims that I have grown soft. Weak. Then, tell them you learned something from humanity. Williams said finally, finding his diplomatic footing. Tell them you discovered a species that converts weakness into innovation. That humanity's illogical compassion produces results that genetic purity cannot. Tell them you're initiating a long-term observation to understand how this is possible. That's not weakness, Your Majesty. That's strategic thinking. The Queen's eyes fixed on the ambassador. You offer me political cover. I offer you a path forward that doesn't require either species to abandon their principles. And the child remains with you. As a guest, not a prisoner. As a cultural liaison, perhaps. A living demonstration of humanity's treatment protocols. Your scientists could study her recovery. Document the treatment. Verify Dr. Tanaka's findings about Kethvara syndrome. Williams was warming to the idea, his diplomatic instincts taking over. This could become a joint research project. A foundation for deeper cooperation. The Queen was silent for a long time. Her honor guards remained tense. The administrative officials were making quiet clicking sounds among themselves, debate, perhaps, or prayer. Finally, the Queen spoke. You understand that I cannot acknowledge your accusations about our genetic engineering. To do so would be political suicide. We understand, Okoye said. You understand that I cannot allow humanity to dictate Velcara internal policy. Of course. But you will not return the flawed one. No, Your Majesty. We won't. Another long silence. Then I propose a compromise. The child will remain in human care for medical observation and recovery. Once she is fully healed, we will reassess her status. This buys time for both our peoples to determine the best path forward. The Queen's eyes glittered. It also gives my scientists time to study your treatment protocols and determine if they are applicable to broader Velcara medical practice. Chen felt something loosen in his chest. Not quite hope. But close. That's acceptable, Okoye said carefully. But understand this, Commander Okoye. I am not abandoning Velcara law. I am not admitting to the crimes Dr. Tanaka alleges. I am engaging in diplomatic pragmatism. The difference is significant. We understand the difference, Your Majesty. Do you? Because I wonder. The Queen moved to the window, looking out at the planet below. You humans are very proud of your compassion. Your mercy. Your willingness to protect the weak. But the galaxy is not kind to the compassionate. Eventually you will be tested. Eventually you will face a choice between your ideals and your survival. She turned back to face them. What will you choose then, I wonder? We'll choose to survive, Chen said quietly. But we'll do it without sacrificing who we are. That's what makes us human, Your Majesty. We find a way. The Queen studied him for a long moment. You truly believe that, Lieutenant? Yes, Your Majesty. Then, you are either very wise or very foolish. Perhaps both. She gestured to her delegation. We will remain on the station for 48 additional hours to finalize this arrangement. My medical advisors will consult with Dr. Tanaka regarding treatment protocols. The flawed one. She paused. The child will remain in human custody pending full recovery. At that time, we will discuss her long-term status. Agreed, Okoye said. The Queen moved toward the exit, her delegation falling into formation. At the doorway, she stopped and looked back at Chen. You asked me earlier if I understood, Lieutenant. If I comprehended the nature of your disagreement with Velkara Lal. Her smaller eyes focused on him with unsettling intensity. I did not answer truthfully. I do understand. I have birthed 243 offspring. 16 were flawed. 16 were eliminated as our law requires. And every time, Lieutenant Chen, I calculated whether I had the strength to refuse. The room was absolutely silent. I never found that strength. The Queen continued. But you did. For a child not your own. For a species not your own. You risked your career, your life, your species' first major alliance, because you decided that protocol was less important than mercy. Her mandibles shifted into a configuration that might have been respect. The galaxy is not kind to the compassionate, Lieutenant. But perhaps it needs them anyway. Then, she was gone, her delegation with her, leaving the humans in stunned silence. Williams collapsed into his chair. Jesus Christ. Did that just happen? Did we just survive that? We survived, Okoye confirmed. Barely. But we're going to have to file about 800 pages of incident reports. She looked at Chen. Starting with you, Lieutenant. You just browbeat an alien empress into questioning 10,000 years of social policy. Yes, ma'am. And you, Dr. Tanaka. Where the hell did you get data on Velkara genetic engineering? Tanaka smiled slightly. I may have spent the last 3 days accessing every piece of Velkara biological research I could find in the diplomatic database. And I may have consulted with several xenobiologists via encrypted channels to verify my conclusions. And I may have prepared a comprehensive report that I absolutely did not have authorization to compile. Did you really have proof of genocide? I had proof that their genetics are suspicious. The genocide is inference. Strong inference, but technically unproven. She shrugged. But I was betting the Queen wouldn't want me to present my evidence to a wider scientific community. Turns out I was right. Okoye laughed, sharp, startled, slightly hysterical. We just bluffed an interstellar empire. We did more than that, Chen said. We made them question themselves. Maybe not openly. Maybe not yet. But that seed is planted now. The Queen knows what Kethvara syndrome really is. Her medical advisors will examine Tanaka's data. Some of them will start asking questions. Change doesn't happen overnight, Commander. But it starts somewhere. It starts with one person refusing. Williams said quietly. One person saying no when everyone else says yes. He looked at Chen. That was you, Lieutenant. Chen thought about the child in Quarantine 7. About her hand reaching out. About the choice he'd made when protocol and conscience collided. It was all of us, he said. Reeves. Tanaka. You, Commander, for trusting me. Williams for finding the diplomatic angle. We all refused. That's how this works. Poetic, Okoye said dryly. But, Chen, you understand that your career just took a very interesting turn. You're now officially the human who made an alien empress back down. That's either going to make you a legend or get you court-martialed. Possibly both. Worth it, Chen said simply. Okoye studied him for a moment, then nodded. Dismissed, Lieutenant. All of you. Go get some sleep. In 48 hours, we're going to have to figure out what we're doing with a Velkara child who's now essentially a human dependent. That's going to be a whole new category of complicated. They filed out, exhausted, running on adrenaline and the fragile hope that they'd done the right thing. In the corridor, Tanaka put a hand on Chen's arm. Thank you, she said, for having the courage to ask. Most people wouldn't have. Most people aren't fathers, Chen replied. He made his way back to Quarantine 7. Reeves was still there, sitting beside the medical platform, the child's hand still gently held in hers. The child was sleeping peacefully now, her breathing steady, her color returning to healthy blue-gray. Sir, Reeves said quietly. The Queen? Back down? For now. He moved to the other side of the platform. How is she? Stable. Strong. She's going to make it. Reeves smiled, tears still wet on her face. She's going to live. The child stirred slightly, her eyes opening halfway. She looked at Qin, and her translator, now fully repaired, processed the clicking sound she made. Safe? Safe, Qin confirmed. Why? The eternal question. The one that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Qin thought about his daughter. About the Queen's mission. About 10,000 years of accepted cruelty and one night of refusal. Because you're a child, he said. And children matter. All children. No exceptions. No justifications. That's just how it is. The child's compound eyes reflected his face in countless fragments. Each one showing the same thing, a soldier who decided that mercy mattered more than orders. Understand not, she said. That's okay. You've got time to figure it out. Her eyes closed again. Her breathing evened out. In sleep, she looked impossibly young and impossibly alien all at once. A life saved. A precedent set. A line drawn in the darkness between stars. Qin looked at Reeves. I need you to do me a favor. Sir? If this goes wrong. If the Queen changes her mind or headquarters decides I broke too many rules or the alliance falls apart, make sure someone takes care of her. Make sure she has a home. Reeves nodded, understanding the weight of what he was asking. I will. I promise. Thank you. He stayed there for another hour, watching the child sleep, watching the monitors display steady vital signs, watching the first light of the planet's sunrise catch the edges of the observation window. The station hummed its endless song. The galaxy turned. And somewhere in the diplomatic quarters, a queen was making decisions that would ripple through her empire for generations. But here, in Quarantine 7, the outcome was simple. A child lived who should have died. A refusal had been spoken that couldn't be unspoken. And humanity had announced to the galaxy that there were some lines they wouldn't cross, some costs they wouldn't pay, some compromises they wouldn't make. Not for technology. Not for alliance. Not for survival itself. Some things were worth more than empires. Marcus Qin, father, soldier, criminal, hero, stood guard over a sleeping child and waited to see what the universe would do next. Outside, the stars burned cold and indifferent. Inside, in the warmth and safety of human protection, a small hand twitched in sleep and didn't let go. The ventilation system hummed. The chronometer marked time. And in the growing light of a new day, humanity stood a little taller, having learned that the hardest part of reaching the stars wasn't the journey. It was deciding who you'd be when you got there. Qin checked his chronometer one more time. Then, he smiled and stood watch. Because some duties transcended protocol. Some choices defined species. And some refusals echoed forever.